Bismillah, wassalatu wassalamu ala rasulillah, amma ba'd. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. The biggest problem that we have in the ummah at present is with regards to leadership. And this has not always been the case. Throughout the annals of history, in the deen of Islam, we've had great leaders. And amongst the great leaders that this ummah had enjoyed is none other than Sayyiduna Uthmaan bin Affan radiyallahu anhu. He was born roughly 6 years after the event of the elephants. And it's said with regards to him, in fact, he himself says that I never consumed alcohol, nor did I commit adultery, nor did I even touch my private part with my right hand before Islam and even after Islam. This was the caliber of this particular Sahabi radiyallahu ta'ala anhum. He had accepted Islam with the initial group who had accepted the deen of Islam, and it was Sayyidina Abu Bakr radiyallahu anhu was instrumental in him accepting the deen of Islam. Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam's two daughters, Ruqayya and Kulthum radiyallahu ta'ala anhuma, were initially married to their own first cousins, the sons of Abu Lahab. Then the verses were revealed, Tabbat yada abi lahab wa tab. And as a result of that, their mother instructed them to divorce the daughters of Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam. And when these two daughters came back to the home of Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam, it was at that point that Sayyidina Uthmaan radiyallahu ta'ala anhu married Ruqayya radiyallahu ta'ala anha. They endured what all the Muslims had endured in the initial days of the deen of Islam, and eventually this led to them undertaking the hijrah. And when Sayyidina Uthmaan and his wife Ruqayya radiyallahu ta'ala had migrated and made hijrah to Abyssinia, at that point Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, this is the first person to make hijrah with his family after Nabi Lut alayhi salatu wassalam. Then when Sayyidina Uthmaan and Ruqayya radiyallahu ta'ala had returned from Abyssinia after spending a period of time there, Ruqayya radiyallahu ta'ala returned to the sad news that her mother had passed away. So her mother had passed away in her absence. She continued to live with her husband in Makkatul Mukarramah until eventually Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam had given the permission for the Muslims to make hijrah to Madinatul Munawwarah. She had made the hijrah with her husband, and it was on the eve of the Battle of Badr when Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam had instructed Sayyidina Uthmaan to remain behind because Sayyida Ruqayya radiyallahu ta'ala had taken ill. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala had granted the Muslims a great victory in the Battle of Badr. But when Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam returned from Badr, he returned to the sad news that his daughter Sayyida Ruqayya radiyallahu ta'ala had passed away. And this was obviously a devastating blow to Sayyidina Uthman. And his greatest concern was that he was no longer linked to the Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam through family. Thereafter, the Battle of Uhud had taken place, and the daughter of Amirul Mu'mineen Umar bin Khattab radiyallahu ta'ala anhu, her husband Kunais bin Huzafa as-Sahmi was injured in Uhud. And his injury continued to get worse after the Battle of Uhud, and as a result, eventually he passed away. When he passed away, Sayyidina Umar became very, very perturbed that his daughter Sayyidah Hafsa was a widow. So he went around looking for someone who would be a suitable person for her to marry. So the first person he approached was Sayyidina Uthman, because he had already lost his wife after the Battle of Badr. So he asked him, or he proposed to him, he made the offer and he said, are you not interested in marrying Hafsa? Her husband has passed away. And Sayyidina Uthman said, give me a few days to think about it. And after a few days, he returned and said that my feeling is that I would not like to get married at this time. After which, Sayyidina Umar radiallahu anhu then approaches Sayyidina Abu Bakr and says that, do you know that Hafsa's husband passed away? Are you not interested in getting married to Hafsa? So concerned Sayyidina Umar was that his daughter has a good husband. Sayyidina Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu responded in a rather unique manner. In fact, he didn't respond at all. He didn't say yay or nay. He didn't say yes or no. And this really angered Sayyidina Umar radiallahu anhu. And as a result, he went to Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam and he complained and he said, I had proposed to Sayyidina Uthman, and this is the answer that he given me. I proposed to Sayyidina Abu Bakr, and he didn't even respond. And at that point, Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, Hafsa will marry someone better than Uthman, and Uthman will marry someone better than Hafsa. Hafsa was to marry the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam, who was obviously better than Sayyidina Uthman. And Sayyidina Uthman was to marry someone who was better than Hafsa. He was to marry the daughter of Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam, Kulthum radiyallahu ta'ala anha. Days later, Sayyidina Umar radiyallahu anhu meets Sayyidina Abu Bakr. And Sayyidina Abu Bakr radiyallahu anhu then says to him that perhaps when you offered Hafsa to me, I didn't respond to you. Perhaps you're angry at me because I didn't respond to you. So Sayyidina Umar radiyallahu anhu said, yes, that did really anger me. You know, not like us who say, no, everything is okay, but we keep it in our heart. So Sayyidina Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu said that the reason why I did not respond was that I knew Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam was interested. So I didn't want to say anything. He didn't give a clear indication. And I wanted to wait for, if Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam was interested, then I didn't want to interfere in his matter, allow him to propose and get married nicely. And if he wasn't interested, I didn't want to say no and jeopardize my own possibility and opportunity. Sayyidina Uthman radiallahu anhu remains alongside Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Eventually, Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam sees the dream that he's performing Umrah, and as a result, Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam takes a group of Sahaba and leaves Madinatul Munawwara towards Mecca. When they come there, the kuffar stop them. Eventually, there is negotiation. Sayyidina Uthman is chosen to go negotiate on behalf of the believers. And he goes and he makes propositions to various leaders of the Quraysh. In the end, there's a truce. And as a result of that truce, they do not perform the Umrah that year. During the time when Sayyidina Uthman was in Mecca negotiating on behalf of the believers, the news had spread that Sayyidina Uthman had been killed. At that time, Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam took the pledge of allegiance from the Sahaba. And while he was taking the pledge, he put his hand on top of his other hand and said, this is the hand of Uthman. I'm placing this hand on behalf of the hand of Uthman. While Sayyidina Uthman was in Mecca, someone from the Sahaba said, how nice it is for Sayyidina Uthman that he's in Mecca, he can make tawaf of the Baytullah. Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, Sayyidina Uthman will not make tawaf without me. And when he returned, they asked him, did you make tawaf? He said, how could I make tawaf without the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam? Then as the time progresses, and it is the time of the battle of Tabuk, the expedition of Tabuk, at that time, it was a very constrained period for the Muslims. And there wasn't much provisions, and it was a long journey that had to be undertaken. Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam stood on the mimbar and he encouraged the Sahaba to spend. Sayyidina Uthman radiallahu anhu made available 100 camels with all its equipment. Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam went again on the mimbar and encouraged the Sahaba. Again, Sayyidina Uthman made 100 camels with all its equipment. And the third time Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam did this, and Sayyidina Uthman responded with another 100 camels, making a total of 300 camels that he made available for the believers for this great expedition. After this, it is said that Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam's face was smiling and he said, "La yadurru Uthman ma fa'ala ba'da al-yawm." Nothing will harm him after what he has done today. This was the great appreciation from Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam. It was after this that when Sayyidina Uthman had returned from the expedition of Tabuk, that his daughter, in fact his wife Kulthum radiyallahu ta'ala had passed away. And he was devastated now that he was cut off from Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He was joined up in terms of family, and again it's cut. And this really made him sad. And Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam, seeing his sadness, said, if I had a third daughter, I would have given her to Uthman also. And it is said, never in the history of mankind has any person married 2 daughters of a Nabi. Sayyidina Uthmaan remained loyal to Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam till the end of his life. He was a close confidant of Sayyidina Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu. When Sayyidina Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu had to deal with the trials, with the difficulties of those who had turned renegade, then in the time of Sayyidina Umar radiallahu anhu, he kept him close and would always take counsel from him. And it was in the end of the life of Sayyidina Umar radiallahu anhu that he had appointed a 6-man shura, that the next Khalifa was to be from those 6 people. Those 6 people met after the demise of Sayyidina Umar, and eventually they came up with the suggestion, and they then pledged their allegiance to Sayyidina Uthman, who was one of those 6. He remained the Khalifa of the Muslimin for about 12 years. The initial period was very, very prosperous, and then there was a rebellion from within the Muslim Ummah. There were new groups of people who had entered into the deen of Islam with different objectives and different ideas and different reasons. And some of them then leveled the unjust criticism against Sayyidina Uthman, that he was guilty of nepotism, that he was giving favor to his own family members, which was totally unfounded. There was no basis to this objection. There was groups of rebels who eventually wanted to take him out and assassinate him. And when these rebels advanced and they came and surrounded his home outside Madinatul Munawwara, at that time various leaders of the Muslims came to him and said, Sayyidina Uthman, let us come to your assistance. Let us put an end to these people. Let us draw our swords on them. And he said that I do not want to be the first to draw swords on the believers. Meaning that these are people who claim to be Muslims, who have the wrong idea. And they continued to surround his house. At that time, Sayyidina Ali came to him and offered his assistance and stationed his 2 sons at the door of his house. He sent them away and said that I do not want any person's blood to be spilt in my defense. Eventually, there was a very wretched man from Egypt who then managed to penetrate into the inner part of the home of Sayyidina Uthman. And as he came close at that time, Sayyidina Uthman was reciting the Noble Quran. His whole life was the Noble Quran. One Sahabi says, I went to the Hatim and I thought, I'm going to perform Salah alone here tonight. Before I started my Salah, Sayyidina Uthman came. He began reading. He read Surah Baqarah, Surah Al Imran. I thought that after a short while stop, he read the entire Quran in 1 rakat. He then read a short surah in the 2nd rakat. He completed his Salah and then he got up and went away. And this was the habit of Sayyidina Uthman. So this wretched Egyptian man then penetrates into the inner circle of the house and he attacks Sayyidina Uthman. And as he strikes him, Sayyidina Uthman holds up his hand and this person strikes the hand. And Sayyidina Uthman tells him that this hand that you're striking is a hand that wrote down the wahi of the Quran in the time of Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. Yet he remains unperturbed by this and he continues striking him. Sayyidina Uthman was reciting the Noble Quran and he was Jami'ul Quran, that he had gathered the Qurans into 7 mushaf which he had sent to various parts, and one he had kept for himself. And while he was reciting the Quran, at that moment when they struck him, the blood came onto the verse, فَسَيَكْفِيكَهُمُ اللَّهُ, Allah will be sufficient for you. His wife at that moment said to the rebels who were there, whether you kill this man or you leave him alive, remember that this is a man who is to stand and recite the Noble Quran in 1 rakat of Salah. Sayyidina Uthman was that individual who said, لَوْ طَهُرَتْ قُلُوبُنَا, if our hearts were purified, we would never become tired of the Noble Quran. And he also said that I hate that a day passes without me looking in the Noble Quran. He passed away at the age of 82 years old, and he was buried in Jannatul Baqi. May Allah be pleased with him and with all the other Sahaba radiyallahu ta'ala anhum. Wa sallallahu ta'ala ala khayri khalqi Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in.